everybody, it's Pete Carmasino with Chaikin Analytics. Thanks for joining me again on the halftime show here on StockCharts TV. Appreciate you tuning in and checking us out week to week. So today we're just going to go over the market, what the S&P is doing, a few different names we're going to look at that are on the bearish side, that have a bearish setup on the technical setups, but also a bearish power gauge. Again, combining the two, technicals and fundamentals. That's what we're all about, and that's what we're trying to achieve on a daily basis when we review all of these names that are kind of popping up on our screens and on our radar. So a lot going on today. You know, the markets have been a little topsy-turvy, so to speak. A lot of news to digest and a lot going on. And so if I'm just looking at sort of what's happening out there from a standpoint of just from a sector and sort of a top-down analysis, we had a nice sell-off today. Everything was pretty much lower across the board. And what we then saw was a nice rally. We saw the old buy the dip came in and made it work again. So it looks good. Pretty much everything right now is, I would call it almost unchanged. Maybe the small caps are off a little bit more. You're actually seeing growth be a bit of an outperformer, and that's different from this morning where value was leading and now it's not. So you're seeing energy really the biggest decliner, consumer discretionary being sort of depressed by Tesla, some recall potential there, and some the autonomous driving sensors and things that had happened there. But we are seeing healthcare as one of the leaders, and I'm going to go over a healthcare name that has recently started to change trend, and one that changed trend a while ago. And I'll show you when those kind of were set up. You are seeing the defensive sectors outperform today. Obviously, when you get a sell-off, you see rotation, come in there. And treasuries were rallying, right? So bonds up, yields down. That's the way that works. That means 10 years at one point earlier today were below 1.25%. So it's pretty interesting is the minute we think rates are rising, something comes in and changes the direction of the market. So let's take a look at the S&P on some levels that we had called out last week that we thought were very important. Then we'll dive right into the stocks. Okay, we are back here on the Chaikin system starting there today. Just looking at the S&P, I mean, look, we had a relative strength change back here in May, and not that it wasn't running prior to that, but because it was. But since May, we really just had a bit of a stair step. We'll get above those volatility lines and sell off. Again, the buy the dip crowd is coming in, and in all shapes and sizes, on all types of days, and it's good to see because obviously keeps the bullish momentum going. So I'm going to go to the ACP platform, and I've got a daily chart up. I'm going to bring it down to a 15-minute chart. And you can see I got a trend line here, really a horizontal line, drawn right at the 440 level. And the reason for that is because, from week to week, I'll call out different levels, beginning of the week and then toward the end of the week. Again, we're trying to track the S&P, not so much to trade it, but just to get a feel for what we can expect and where trouble areas, might come into play if support breaks down. And then obviously if resistance starts to get in the way. And we are seeing pockets of that. But if you can see here, last week, this was the 13th, Friday the 13th note that we put out. I write it, and, I called on the downside where 44.40 would be the first level of support. And again, if you're looking at the chart, you're just seeing this level of consolidation here. And it was just a few days. But even on a longer term trend, a very longer term trend line actually was being drawn right around that 44.40 level. And lo and behold, we did hit there. Now on a 15-minute chart, you see the 200 moving average actually played a bit of a role there as well. I don't know if it was specifically built for this particular setup, but it happened to be in an area of support anyway. And not only do we hit it, but we are now pushing new highs. So we are at 44.71. That's higher than we were on Friday. And that was really our next level was 44.78. So let's see if we get there by the end of the day, and we can round it up to 44.80. Next levels would be 44.90, which likely gets us to 4,500 anyway. I don't know if that's going to happen today. But again, what's happening here in the markets is just a continuation of bullish activity. So some names I want to look at, and I'll go back here, go to a daily, And then I will type in some bearish names, right? In the food group, the food industry, Performance Food Group is a name that we have a bearish rating on. I'm going to click on our rating right here, and it's very bearish. Really, experts and earnings, that kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes you start to see one move before the other. Sometimes experts are anticipating better earnings and vice versa. Sometimes the earnings are ahead or beating expectations. And so on a longer term level, you can see, this is really right on support around that 41, 46. I do have the 55 crossing the 200, but again, on a very bearish level, this is very new as far as a technical breakdown. Now, I know the highs are up here at 60, looks like almost like a double top as well, and struggling really to get anywhere above these two moving averages. But what do we see here? Just a series of lower lows and lower highs, just building sort of a channel trade on the way down. And if I go to our system and pull up PFGC, our Performance Food Group chart here, again, it's a little bit different, obviously a lot different than ACP, but we also have generated an overbought sell today. What that means is we've got a weak stock and a weak industry that's breaking down, and it happened to be overbought here. Again, that series of higher highs coming into play. And if I expand and look at the, again, the power gauge where they're all kind of lining up, you can see that's identical to what you see on StockCharts. And it's just amazing that you see these things start to change. But look when the relative strength changed. It's changed on May 5th. And that's typically one of the first signals that we see. And if you go back here and you start to look at the May timeframe, we're getting a breakdown around that 55 exponential moving average as well. Not quite that bearish and trying to make its way back. But again, what happened there was the name just broke down. Another name in this group, CASY, General Stores. It's kind of in that, food retailing, consumer staples group as well. Same thing. Now we got a little bit better expert level here. Now that could be a few different things. They could be behind in downgrading or ahead in their upgrades, maybe expecting some better earnings. Now we got a big gap here on that breakdown, and it's just about starting that crossover. It got very, very close. And today it's kind of, let's call it unchanged, really. It really hasn't made much of an attempt here, but it looks like 200 is sitting there as a bit of resistance. But again, you've got a name that's barely hanging on to the RSI down here around that 50 level. You can see it's kind of migrated back and looks like it's got resistance. So the technicals are definitely pointing to the bearish side, and so is our rating, right? So if you go and we look here, CASY, same kind of a setup that we're probably going to see like we see here in Performance Food Group as well. And again, weak stock and a weak industry and overbought sell, meaning that it has moved higher, got into this $200 range. It looks to be some resistance, negative money flow. But look when everything started to change. Is on that gap I pointed out is when that relative strength started to change. It's most likely a continuation. Relative strength on our system and most systems is really a precursor to the direction that it's pointing in, right? So once it starts a direction, it kind of sits in that area until something either materially changes it, drastically, or, kind of runs into its own resistance along the way and just starts to produce lower highs and lower lows. So we'll look at that. So let's look at some bullish names, and I'll flip the script here a little bit, and I'll look at AMN Healthcare Services, and their staffing service for the healthcare industry, hospitals, and other types of facilities as well. That's up nicely today. I mean, that's up over 3.5%. But look at it, we're very bullish. Earnings are in line, technicals are in line, experts are in line. And this trend has obviously identified itself for some time. But if I go and look at AMN here on our system, I had an opportunity here when that relative strength sort of went sideways and started to move higher. And really, it's about, that's around $80 a share. But everything is in line now. And look at the estimates up big. You're starting to see these, obviously it's going to be a good quarter versus last quarter, like we're seeing everything else happen here. But again, in healthcare and healthcare providers, this is a group that's been leading. It's leading again today. And I consider it a defensive group as well. But I'll tell you, with the earnings and the power of names behind this, it's been working very well. And you can look at, this is the one I was going to talk about that had quite a turnaround. I mean, this thing was in the teens, July of last year, about a year or so ago. All right. And that summer after the sell-off, it was back and forth, a lot of trading back and forth. We're very bullish on the name. And let's go look at, when things start to change on the system. Where was THC? Where was it when it really started to make a change? And it was right around that level that I called out, right around that $20 to $25 level. And the teens were a little bit back here. This is a 1-year chart, so I don't have July here on a daily. My point here is that the relative strength signaled such a strong move. And on the sell-off, even though we broke trend here once in a while, the relative strength stayed strong. And that's an indication of a very strong stock. Not only that, the power gauge is very bullish. And so you've got a kind of a double barrel setup with not only your technicals lining up in a continuation trade, but you also have your fundamentals as well. And then we'll look at one here in the capital markets space, Blackstone. Again, a nice bullish rated name. It's been breaking out. It's been putting in these series of, again, higher lows and higher highs. And here we see it again. And again, capital markets have been on our radar for quite some time. And then the other group is the auto group. If I look at AutoNation, this had a bit of a pullback recently, and it, held RSI levels, held the moving average levels. But look at the power gauge. I mean, from a financials, earnings, technicals, and experts level, you've got a really great setup here. And again, autos in general, we've been hearing about inflation and used cars and things of that nature. But I mean, when this had this bit of a pullback here, we consider this an oversold buy based on our relative strength and the way we calculate our oversold and overbought indicators. And it's really performing. I mean, it's up big today. I mean, these are the pitfalls of doing videos in the middle of the day. It's hard to catch these before they start. And again, up $6 over 5% in one day. That's a big move. So I appreciate you taking the time and looking here at our setups and how the power gauge works. And as you can see, when you combine these two together and you're putting yourself in a position of putting more evidence on your side of the table, again, using technicals and fundamentals. I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks again. And we'll be back at you next week. Take care.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.